Hello and most welcome to 935 of the Heidegger series, and I will look into another deconstructive way. I think it is most important to add the different ways, because deconstruction can be as different as the world is different, and deconstruction must always be brought to the specific case. It is not something that can be generalized, because that is in itself a sort of centrism. I look into dynamics of time and space, undertitled Transcending Limits on Knowledge by Tarthang Tulku, and it is from the year 1994. Oddly enough, the cover is actually photos of fractality. I think that is quite interesting. Is it a coincidence? I don't know, and I don't think anyone can help me with that, but it is still interesting. The chapter is the first of a series of chapters that go into what is the faculty of understanding. It starts like this on page 173. When we look around the world that we inhabit, we discover individual entities interacting in various ways. We set about determining their nature, characteristics, making divisions, and organizing into territories. We set about determining their nature and characteristics. We classify and make categories. We refine our initial stance into theories, rules of thumb, and philosophies. We project our views out into reality, juxtaposing our opinions' interpretations to establish certainties. We have already explored, earlier in the book that is, the underlying mechanism and structures that sustain these ways of knowing. In terms of how we know, however, the fundamental structures relates to the position that we make up in regard to the world that we observe and make use of. We are bystanders to reality. We stand outside the flow of what is happening, struggling to make sense of it. As bystanders, we start from a position of not knowing and never really advance beyond it. Situated at a distance from what needs to be known, we cannot wholly bridge that gap. Our knowledge is limited accordingly. It is like designing a dress for someone we have never seen, based on descriptions and rumors. We use our best imagination, formulate our best hypothesis, make our best comparisons, and hope that the dress fits. What more can we do? Once our fabrications are put in place, we make new experience accord with them and act on the basis of the values and certainties they proclaim. We act to make our views conclusive, to establish truth, reality, and the absolute. We force the multiple dimensionality of what rises into the world, of what we have already claimed and proclaimed. We let our ideas define our experience and give character and characteristics accordingly. Perhaps appearance itself could lead the mind to knowledge, but that is not our way. Instead, we make what appears follow the lead of the bystander mind. This juxtaposition of what we hold to be true proceeds without interruption, even though we are constantly asking, what is new? We base our lives on what is old and established, on fixed ideas and principles and positions. We embody whatever subjective views are foremost in our minds and interpret meaning and value accordingly. We pursue the course they set and look for further modes of projection. Starting as bystanders, we become bystanders, maintaining our particular version of reality above all else. Next paragraph, structure of not knowing. These patterns hinder our efforts at clarity and obstruct our attempts to deal with our difficulties. In every field of knowledge, we subordinate experience to the governing concepts and models, or else let previous outcomes and future expectation pull us away from the present. We insist on structures of dichotomy that turn away from the complexity of the multidimensional. Heaven and hell, sacred and profane, right and wrong, happiness and suffering, truth and falsity, hope and fear. Active at the root of our knowing, such patterns undermine our efforts to discover a different way of knowledge. Insight is soon integrated with the established, while intuition leaves intact the positions that shape conventional knowledge. We may cultivate sensitivity to the flow of feelings or energy within and around us, but our experience still lacks penetrating clarity. Our spontaneous actions must be harmonized with the code of ethics in operation. Our demands for justice advance one claim in opposition to another. Our declaration of rights confirms the existence of wrongs. Our struggles for peace assure conflict and frustration. Our calls for reform prove that someone else is in control. Each question becomes a claim, each claim a battle, each battle a question of power. Reform a revolution, metamorphose through time until they stand revealed as recycling of the status quo. Most important of all, this way of knowing undermines our conscious efforts to go beyond it. When we attempt to understand the workings of mind and awareness, we use the very patterns under investigation as the fundamental tools for inquiry. When we discover indications that the higher or more encompassing knowledge is in operation, we will refer to them to a source situated in the realm of the absolute, making them inaccessible to direct experience and investigation. Visionary knowledge is swept aside or reduced to routine, subverted by the structures of dichotomy. Knowledge that responds to deeper rhythms and possibilities falls by the wayside. As an indication of how pervasive these patterns are, it should be noted that they apply with full force to the present discussion. Certain ways of knowing are designated as inadequate, with the implication that they should be discarded or replaced. Certain values are assigned, inviting a particular response that will induce a particular course of conduct. We start from the established and seem obliged to move within its confines, bound to a list of dichotomies that could be extended indefinitely. We can never truly be in the right. Whatever choice we make, we conform to a knowledge thought out for us in advance. To play our role, we must discard a part of what we are or might be, what we know or could know. In this way of knowing, we accept that our own thoughts, our own mind as such, do not have intrinsic value. They do not carry knowledge. It is the positions that we affirm as right or wrong, not the telling of the story, but its outcome, the original position from which each of us must start. Since this is so, we are in wrong until proven to be in the right. Our pain, our confusion, our agitation all confirm our own shortcomings. Perhaps we can seek refuge in something beyond ourselves, but this means giving up on our own capacities. Or perhaps there is no refuge, and then our situation is truly hopeless. As long as we are bound to the patterns of the bystander, it is difficult to imagine how this way of being could ever change. For instance, suppose we resolve to overcome our sense of being, separate from our own experience and our surrounding world. Now there is something we must do, something we must obtain or become. We have to recollect or improve or accumulate, to make better or reject or temporize. Without meaning to, we perpetuate an orientation that assures continued separation. The model we adopt rely on derivations based on from and to that inevitably restrict the knowledge available here and now. The change we pursue will come too late. In all this, we have no choice. It seems we must go step by step, learning, applying, improving, and at last attaining the goal. We grow in this way, we build in this way, we worship in this way. From the outset we are outsiders, repeatedly taking stands. We affirm that we are bystanders. We have no other way to be. And continuing on next paragraph. Knowledge into knowledge. Somehow we have taken on a thankless and unrewarding job, convinced that it is up to us to be the founders of knowledge in the universe. We have felt obliged to assert our claims to knowledge, even when we know on a deeper level that they are unfounded. Not knowing directly, we have felt compelled to guess and to pretend, fooling ourselves as well as others. Cut off from our embodiment in space and time, we have nonetheless appointed ourselves spokespersons for time, space and knowledge. Aware of our limitations, we have decided to insist on a small portion of knowledge that we can claim as our own, even if this means accepting as inevitable the endless not knowing that surrounds it. Yet these prodigious efforts are not needed. The job we carry out exists only in our description of it. We do not need to speak for time and space. For if we know how to listen, time and space speaks for themselves. We do not have to proclaim our portion, because we are already inseparably related to the whole. When we discover that this is so, a tremendous burden is lifted from our shoulders. We can stand up straight, stretch, and take a deep breath. With the very first step we take, we can let go of the knowledge that we possess and merge with the knowledge that transcends all positions. We can embody this knowledge in ways that are concrete and specific, showing time, space, and knowledge in operation. In laying down the burden of bystander knowledge, we lose nothing of value. My knowledge and positions form a part of the merging whole, and so remaining available. That is the beauty and freedom of knowledge. It rejects nothing and encompasses all manifestations. Knowledge frees appearance for the claims of truth and transmits the beauty of the true. Whatever qualities manifest beautify knowledge. Whoever acts with clarity is a bearer of knowledge. Although we act on the basis of our limitations, although we make false interpretations and enact a restricted understanding, knowledge continues to be available. We can turn away from knowledge, but we cannot injure or confine it. The limits on our comprehension are not limits on universal knowledgeability. Well, I continue once. Now I have the speed. Key to knowledge. How can we know that knowledge is directly available? Must we accept it on faith? Must we give credence to certain parts of our experience while rejecting the significance of others? What is the basis for making this distinction? How can we trust the knowledge that tells us to do so? The answer, in a sense, is simple. We can learn to listen to knowledge in all its manifestations, from the most practical to the most sublime. As we grow accustomed to hearing the voice of knowledge within the parents, issues of trust and confidence will clarify themselves. An inner dynamic enacted by knowledge itself will point the way to knowledgeability. Let us take a concrete example. Finally, centuries ago, the idea of property was little developed, and trade was conducted informally or in the context of other interactions, based on little more than agreement that certain goods had value. Starting with something as simple as a handful of salt or a string of beads, trade gradually expanded. Merchants developed their own concern and ways of living, evolved their own ways of seeing the world, and attempted to protect their interests. From these beginnings, the whole system of finance took form, and in the time the science of economics, the law of corporations, and many other disciplines as well. Today, no branch of human knowledge is wholly unaffected by these forms of understanding. From similar humble beginnings, the great demands of knowing have likely taken form. Philosophy, psychology, religion, and science, each making its own contributions to the welfare of human beings, each embodying different manifestation of knowledge. In fact, knowledge appears in all our projections and interpretations. All the structures we adopt and the views we expose, even the study of what we value as knowledge at different times and in different circumstances, is a source of knowledge. We can understand this circumstance as demonstrating only what is self-evident. Whatever we learn is knowledge. But there is more at stake than that. From the point of view of knowledge, we can put it this way. Knowledge is knowable. In the particulars of what presents itself, knowledge makes itself available, not as object for a bystander, not as something to be known by somebody, but as the intrinsic knowledgeability of the whole. The usual structures of language do not easily accommodate such availability. Independent of subject and object, but we can speak of knowingness and knowability. We can refer to knowledgeability. We can also put it this way. Within every appearance, we are already in contact with the body of knowledge. It may be difficult to discover the boundless availability of knowledge, for our own efforts to accumulate knowledge can only proceed little by little in a process that goes on endlessly. This is especially true today, when knowledge is structured so that it constantly proliferates. As the facts available to be known expand exponentially, the interconnections that could lead us back to the whole are buried or forgotten, the amnesia, in parentheses I would say. Yet knowledge by nature invites knowledge, and knowledge accumulates accordingly in a natural progression that signals the presence of the body of knowledge. Once we give up our insistence on owning knowledge, we recognize that even when we receive, achieve, seek, or inquire, this is knowledge. Soon we notice that results and achievements come without depending on our efforts. As we learn to see through our own limits, we discover that we have the capacity for inspiring vision and creative imagination in ourselves and others. Some of who have seen this dynamic at work have called it love or truth. Others have spoken instead of wisdom or beauty of blessing. It does not matter. Labels do not confine knowledge, nor do words bring it to a halt. We can also discover the availability of knowledge in the ways that knowledge manifests through time. There are times when new knowledge emerges unexpectedly, times when it plays a vital role in the era of expansion and discovery, and other times when it seems to lose its vitality and value. The same knowledge may be used quite differently as circumstances alter, or may grow and change, taking different forms in response to different conditions. If we study the history of these changes, how we use our knowledge and make it available, how we educate ourselves and others, we traverse a field of knowledge that reveals the body of knowledge in action. It reminds me a great deal about Friedrich Nietzsche. It is this understanding that we are bounded by knowledge, that what was constructed before have become our prison in a way, and that we are constantly reinforcing it. It is also that our tools has become our limits. It's like being in a factory and the factory only making one thing becomes in the end its limitation, something that has happened before. And once you get stuck in one way of production, it is similar to knowing in only one way. What he wants to show us is like Nietzsche, especially in gay science, that the knowing capacity cannot be shut down in advance. There are so many ways of knowing, and why should we be happy with only one? That is a very strict limitation. And this is also referring to conscious control of Frederick Matthias Alexander, the very possibility that we are in control of ourselves and we are not sort of delegating knowledge and control to our outside, something that automatically has happened in modern days. We have gained safety and security, but the price we have had to pay is enormous. Our own possibility of understanding. This is what we have given up. But as Tarthang Tulku, and I think maybe Friedrich Nietzsche would have read these words, he would have agreed, it's always a possibility to regain knowledge. It cannot be injured. And what is that if not incredibly hopeful? This is deconstruction on a broader level, and this is where I want to take it, inspired by Rodolphe Gasset, of course. I say thank you very much this hot day, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.